Have that clip ready, but let's bring in now the Communications Minister, Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams. As you know, SABC management is adamant that it's continuing with the retrenchments of 400 permanent staff. In an email to SABC staff, SABC management and the board have apologized for what they've called the confusion that yesterday's standoff with news staff created. In a heated meeting between management and staff in the newsroom yesterday, Group Executive of News, Phathiswa Magopeni, said she couldn't continue issuing letters of redundancy to affected staff under the current climate. The newsroom drama has also prompted Communications Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams to convene an urgent meeting with the board and the management last night. I want to bring in the minister now to discuss these and other issues. Minister, welcome to the agenda.
Thank you, Blaine, and good morning to all the listeners.
Good to have you on the program. Thank you very much indeed for taking the opportunity. Last night, you had this meeting with the board and management. What was the outcome?
Well, the outcome, because the meeting really was to get to understand what is happening as we've seen in the news, but most importantly to say why was the department, which is the shareholder, not kept on board, taking into consideration that the department did issue a statement in relation to the retrenchments that are happening at SABC. We gave a clear state where we are at to say we are against the retrenchments. They have to be a last resort. And Blaine, this does not mean that we do not have an appreciation of the challenges and the wrongs that happened at SABC, but we are saying if there are other avenues, let those be employed. This is why, indeed, we then, through the Deputy Minister who's mandated or delegated to lead SABC, we have engaged other entities, because one of the driving costs at SABC is the issue of signal distribution, which is what the department, led by the Deputy Minister, engaged Signal to say, how can you revisit your costing strategy in order to minimize the impact that goes to SABC?
Minister,
and as I said, yes, Blaine?
As a shareholder, are you for or against retrenchments here at the SABC?
Blaine, it means you have not been listening to me or you have not been reading it. We have said we are against retrenchment.
So are you...
Whilst we have an appreciation of the challenges, we are saying let's all meet and identify areas that we can deal with, including leaving them if we have to, so that we address the challenges that are faced at SABC.
I asked the question, Minister, and I heard you. I asked the question in terms of, help me understand the power of persuasion of a shareholder in this regard, with regards to putting pressure on SABC to put a hold on these retrenchments. So what sort of power do you have as a shareholder? Well,
unfortunately, as the shareholder, we can only provide advice and intervention through Parliament, which is given the authority by the law. As you have seen when SABC went to court, then the court ruled against the involvement of the shareholder in the SABC matters. But we are saying we have to be responsible, Blaine. We've seen ministers and entities going to Zondo Commission for failure to provide active oversight. And this is amongst other things. But as a department, we cannot go and argue for budget for SABC and we do not look into how it is spent. And it is in this context that we say part of our oversight is to say, do we get value for the monies that we are pumping into SABC? Does our public mandate get to be fulfilled by all those that are at SABC? If not, what are the challenges? What policy can we introduce, or what legislative ways, including regulations, that we must introduce to make sure that SABC becomes sustainable and fully functional and a public broadcaster of choice? But that cannot be the first option to say, let's get people out of jobs. That we can never accept as a current government.
I want to get a sense of the tone and tenor of that meeting that you had yesterday. We heard from the Deputy Chairperson of the SABC board that there are at least 5 board members that are against retrenchments at the SABC. What would you say in terms of how divided this board is on this matter?
Well, as you are mentioning something that was said by the Deputy Chair, as I've already just briefed the Portfolio Committee, that we also have observed those divisions to an extent that others are even saying there was no board resolution. And again, this is a matter that we're going to deliberate on with Parliament at 6 o'clock tonight. That's when we're getting an understanding if there are people who are differing. And as I said, it doesn't mean that at all times majority has spoken that it is right. You have seen things that have been happening in Parliament place. Majority has taken decisions, and then when they go to court, they are overturned. One of the other issues that we're concerned about is the fact that every time we go to a CCMA, the people that get to be suspended, they've been winning the cases. And we are saying, then definitely it tells that there's a loophole somewhere that needs to be attended, so that we do not get to spend money on all unnecessary things, instead of trying to make sure that we bring all these resources in order to address the challenges that we are faced with at SABC.
I want to explore more with regards to certain options that you alluded to earlier on. You saw the pictures, Minister, on our television screens from yesterday evening. The pain is real. Staff are hurting. Morale is low. What is the way forward? What sort of options, viable, practical options are there for the SABC to take other than these retrenchments?
I'm so blamed as we have listened to the management of SABC and the board of SABC talking about the importance of it being able to be competitive like its competitors. And one of the things that the SABC competitors have undertaken, they looked at salary freezes. They had cuts, and we are saying if they can do that, why can't SABC consider those? But again, this has to be done within the prescripts of the law. That is why we're calling for a negotiated settlement. This morning, I met with the Minister of Labour and Employment, Minister Ngesi, to say, how do you work together in order to try to resolve the impasse that is between SABC board management and its staff? Because it is our responsibility once more as government to make sure that at all times we minimize the impact of people losing jobs, because it becomes a burden to the state again. When people lose jobs, they must go to Minister Zulu in terms of SASSA. We must be paying for their students. They can't afford fees. All those things we are saying, let's look into the impact in the ecosystem that we are working on. And that's what we're calling for from the SABC board and management, without dictating to them to say, can we understand they can say the law favors them or whatever that they say favors them, but it goes beyond that. There's timing in everything that is being done, and also there's that must be aligned to the strategic objectives of the organization, so that you can make sure that your strategy to retrench if you are retrenching or to hire if you are hiring talks to that you want to achieve.
I want to talk about the mandate of the SABC and help our viewers understand the importance of having such an organization that is well-staffed and highly skilled staff. That's notwithstanding. But talk to us about the importance of the mandate of the SABC going forward.
We have, for many times, emphasized why it is important that SABC does not only become a public broadcaster of choice, but to continue playing its own mandate of providing public services to the people of South Africa who cannot afford all the other luxuries that are out there. This is why, again, as I said, we said the need for a multi-stakeholder effort to resolve the challenge is required. As I said, this is a strategic entity, and it operates directly in the public terrain. We cannot mess with that. That's why, even as we said from government side, this is what you are looking at, and then we're going to Parliament to say, can they collectively put weight behind finding a solution to the SABC crisis? We're doing so because the law does allow them to look into those, and therefore through us as we report to Parliament to share our observations and of course the possible interventions that according to the law we are empowered with, to say we can review the policies, we can engage the regulators in line with what the Act says. That's all we're asking for, an opportunity for SABC board and management to just listen and give other stakeholders an opportunity to make input whilst recognizing their independence.
It is such an important mandate that the SABC has, and as you rightfully say, it needs to be independent as well. But what about increasing government's funding for the SABC? That surely should be one of the considerations.
One of the things that we have, I remember myself also when I was still with of the Portfolio Committee in Parliament, we have continuously asked for SABC to provide the public funding cost. How much are they spending and how much is required? And up to date, we still have not received. We've changed boards and executives, but I don't know what is the issue. Even if you look into the GTAC recommendations, that finds expression again to say, how do we look into the commercial side and separate that from the public mandate, so that government can fully take responsibility for funding of the public mandate, whilst the commercial channels run their things that they are running. And as I said, government has still been committed, but we cannot pump funds when there's no clear framework and a clear detail to say this is how much we spend on public mandate and this is how much we need. And therefore, this is the personnel that must drive that, because again, it's not about pumping money. You spoke of a highly skilled public broadcaster. That requires us, which is why we said the SABC must conduct a skills audit, must come up with a reskilling and upskilling plan, must give us a future investment plan, so that we can have an appreciation of what SABC wants to do in the 5 years without us putting that in public, because we do understand the issues of competition. But for them to share with the shareholder, that must go and plead the treasury for the funding of the mandate that SABC is responsible for.
Minister, we hope that we can engage with you after this meeting with the Portfolio Committee, but we thank you very much indeed for coming on and giving us your take on the matters. Be well.
Thank you so much, Ben.
All right, that was Communication Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams there.